Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock, Drogheda. April Fool's Day. Did you get tricked yet? Did somebody play an April Fool's prank on you? I've been fooled and made a fool of myself spectacularly on the 1st of April in years gone by with some of the pranks that have been played on me. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought about where it all comes from. In fact, this whole practice of playing April Fool jokes goes back to a pope, Pope Gregory the 13th in the 16th century. And Gregory decided that he was going to replace the calendar that countries used, because up until that time, they used the Julian calendar, named after Julius Caesar, which started the first day of the year was the spring equinox, that day at the end of March, beginning of April, whenever the hours of daylight and the hours of darkness are exactly the same. 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of darkness. And Gregory said, no, we're going to start doing it a different way, because there was some problems with that Julian calendar. It was a solar calendar, and basically it wasn't quite accurate, so they lost a day every 128 years, which might not sound a lot, but over centuries, from over 15 centuries, they had actually lost now quite a bit of time. And so what was happening was that the celebration of Easter was getting further and further away from the time when they were supposed to have it. And so they decided it was time to fix this. And Pope Gregory did that. And surprise, surprise, it was called the Gregorian calendar. Now, when they introduced it, and the predominantly Catholic countries all followed the Pope's instruction. And in France in particular, there were people who insisted on still celebrating the new year on the 1st of April. And so they called them Poisson d'Avril, or April fish. And they pinned, when they weren't looking to show how foolish they were, they cut out a little cardboard fish and pinned it to the back of their coats so everybody could laugh at them. And that's basically the origin of playing April Fool's Day pranks on each other. Now, the British, of course, had the Reformation, so they weren't going to change their calendar for the Pope, and they didn't change it until 1752. So we're talking nearly 200 years later. And whenever the British changed it, what they did in 1751, they had New Year's Day was on the 25th of March, and they had New Year's Eve then on the 31st of December. So 1751 was a much shorter year to bring it into line. And then in 1752, they still had a problem because those missing days still meant they were out of sync with the rest of Europe. And so what they did, they decided that they were going to jump to make up for 11 days that had been missed by following the old calendar. They basically jumped from the 2nd to the 14th of September. So people in England and all the British Empire went to bed on the night of the 2nd of September, and they got up the next morning at the 14th of September. And again, there were people who made fools of themselves over this, and they actually went out rioting on the streets, protesting that 11 days had been stolen from their lives, and they wanted those 11 days back. So I guess, you know what? April Fool's Day is all about people getting fooled by changing dates. We've probably all laughed at people who have ended up being late for stuff because they forgot to change their clocks or forgot to put their clocks forward or put them back or whatever. But when we talk about this foolishness, you know, in the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 25 says, the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. That might seem almost blasphemous to talk about the foolishness of God. And it's talking about something that is apparently foolish to the world. Why? Because God uses us as his instruments, and we look foolish to the world because we've embraced the gospel of Jesus Christ. We look weak to the world because often we're not the most important people in our countries or the most impressive or the most famous celebrities, but God uses us anyway, because God uses the weak and foolish things of this world. And so when the Bible says that the foolishness of God is wiser than men and the weakness of God is stronger than men, it's actually talking about you and me, about believers who are empowered by God to serve him. And while other people might look at us as foolish and other people might look at us as weak, we can actually do all things through Christ who strengthens us, which would make me say, well, who's the fool now? I pray that today you will live your life as a person who is filled with the wisdom of God. The world might call you foolish, but God grants you his wisdom. So whether you got caught out by a prank or not, you are no April Fool. You are the very wisdom of God. May God bless you today. Have a great day. Join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock, Drogheda.